Good evening, nosy bitch nation. How the fuck are you? Sorry for the late video today. I've kind of felt like shit all day, so I waited until I took a shower and got my kid in the bathtub before I came over to get started for today. All right, today we started week number 2, technically week number 3, in the trial of George Wagner IV in the Rodin murders in Pike County. Today was day 6, and we only had 2 witnesses today. We are continuing the prosecution's main questioning of a BCI agent that processed Chris Sr.'s scene, and then we moved on to a second BCI agent who was mainly in charge of Hannah Hazel and Frankie's house, but who also helped with the coolest thing I have ever seen, a 3D scan of the scene for Chris Sr. So if you were in my live on Friday night, which was a scattered ADHD mess, we were kind of talking about maybe some theories, and a couple of mine got proven wrong today, but one of them is still holding some water, and I still maintain that the boys, Jake and George, were in the truck and that Chris Sr. was aware of them being there. So today we got into bullet trajectory, and then we also got into things that were found inside the house, a couple of items that came from one of the victims, and some movement of Chris Sr. and Gary's bodies by BCI Special Agent Shane Hanshaw. The side of Valley Guardian was letting me down today with their summary, so today I am on newsbreak.com, which is sharing a article from WCPO Channel 9 in Cincinnati, which if you have watched my sources and credits video, I get a lot of mine from one of their reporters. His name is Evan Millward on Twitter. He does a great job. This article was written by Felicia Jordan, and she did a wonderful job summing this up today. First things first, early on today, we found out, related to the trial but unrelated to the testimony, they have filed paperwork to revoke the privileges of both Angela Wagner and Jake Wagner in jail. They are both in Columbus. Jake is in Franklin County, and Angela, I believe it said, was in Delaware County. Probably, doesn't matter. But they have had any of their phone, letter, outside contacts, privileges revoked, probably for trying to find out what's being said during the trial and all of that. So that is revoked until they testify, and we do not have a date yet on when that might be. So go to part 2. We'll get into the testimony from today. All right, I'm not going to lie to you. I did not watch this trial in the morning. I slept until noon today because I had a horrific headache, so I kind of skimmed it. So best I can tell, we didn't really get into a ton before lunch. There was a little bit here and there, but it was all revisited later on. So I don't think I've missed anything today. I'll let you know if I did. So we did some more bullet evidence, where the bullets were. They showed some trajectory photos, and he went into some incidental things that he found. This is Shane Hanshaw, by the way. He went into some incidental things that he found on the property and inside the home of Chris Sr. Now, I said in my live on Friday that I'm pretty sure that Chris Sr. shot back. I actually don't believe that now, just based on this evidence. They do have a bullet that went into the floor that did not hit anybody. I did not hear any specifics on what gun that came from, so I don't know if that came from Jake, George, or Billy Wagner, or if it was Chris Sr.'s attempt to get off a shot before he was shot himself. I don't know. And they did show that a lot of the shooting came from outside, from the front yard, so they wouldn't have been shooting on the front porch. They would have started shooting from the yard, which would make sense, especially if the boys were either hiding in the truck or sitting in the truck in plain sight, which I believe they would have gotten out of the truck and begun shooting as they came in. Hanshaw said that he processed the scene and collected most of the evidence personally, and that he never went to any of the other crime scenes. He was focused solely on Chris Sr.'s property. Excuse me, I have hiccups. And that he and his partner stayed until about 3 a.m. the following morning, processing the scene, and they personally put Chris Sr. and Gary's bodies into body bags and passed them off to the coroner's office. Items that were found in the living room of this house: a broken pair of eyeglasses with one lens broken out, lying on the floor in a pool of blood. The blood tested was Gary Roden's. And if you've ever seen a picture of Gary Roden did in fact wear glasses. So I would assume that this was probably one of the shots that did him in. Also found belonging to Gary Roden was a New York Jets baseball cap. It was discovered on the floor of the kitchen in the home. The hat appeared to have perforations in the fabric, he said, and there was a hole in the back that Hanshaw testified appeared to be from a bullet and tearing in the front near the bill where the bullet said, what Hanshaw said the bullet was lodged. Go to part 3. We'll talk about some more. Okay, part 3. We're back with Shane Hanshaw. He was discussing the drag marks through the house. He said that he found Chris Sr. and Gary in the back bedroom. Why does my hair get those random little curls in it? It's so weird. He said that he found Chris Sr. and Gary in the back bedroom. They had obviously been dragged there. If you remember back in day 1, we were shown some drag mark pictures that we've not been shown pictures with blood anymore, but they are still on the internet. And also, if you go to Evan Millward, at Evan Millward, Millward, on Twitter, he posted several of the images from today, pictures of the trajectory paths. Sorry, my cat's crying. He posted a lot of pictures that they were shown in evidence today, obviously not the bloody ones, and there were some graphic ones today. We saw close-up pictures of the victims today, their placement, their hands. I guess Hanshaw was looking for signs of trauma, etc. It was really sad to watch the family members have to see these pictures. They were, of course, covered in blood. And I can't imagine seeing that 6 years later. So they were both lying on the floor of the back bedroom with their arms stretched above their heads. Their sweatshirts and the legs of their jeans were bunched up, indicating that they had been dragged across the house by their feet. They also saw pictures of their gunshot wounds, which I'm sure was pretty traumatic. Chris Sr.'s wallet was found lying between his legs with his ID still inside. And investigators did, of course, do lots of swabbing for DNA, and there was none except their own or the other. There were a couple of instances from the rest of the house where there was a mix of DNA, but it was inconclusive as to whose. But the prosecution made a point of pointing out that these men probably had gloves on, so it's very unlikely there's going to be any kind of touch DNA. Hanshaw made a point of saying that he did not think that the house showed any classic signs of a struggle, like knocked over furniture, misplaced things, like, anything knocked over, stolen, strewn about, whatever. But he could tell that there was a struggle. They also later came and broke into, there were 2 safes on the property. Inside the home, there was a large safe, a gun safe, and then a smaller safe. There were rumors going around for a while that the small safe was missing and that potentially that was tied into the Charlie Reeder theft thing. But on the testimony today, they did mention the small one, so it was obviously still in the house. So that was just a rumor. Head on over to part 4. We'll finish this testimony. The prosecution did make a point of pointing out today that there was no DNA found in this house of Chris Sr.'s belonging to any of the 4 Wagners that have been accused. The only DNA that was found was that of Gary Roden and Chris Roden Sr., and mixes of blood that were inconclusive. Inside the large safe, hold on, I'm going to see if I can find this post that I found earlier that listed what was in it, because it was kind of nuts. I also forgot to add that we were listening to, I believe his name is John Parker today, who was doing the prosecution talking and questioning. This is coming from James Pilcher at James Pilcher on Twitter. He works for Local 12 in Cincinnati. Doesn't say what channel that is. So this is where this is from. There were some drugs that were found in the safe. It was a baggies of white powder. We all know what that is. A little bit of nose candy going on. They also found what appears to be a Crown Royal bag of dry rice, which I would assume would be for moisture. There was a driver's license for Chris Jr., social security cards for Frankie Roden, his son Ruger, some other items, identification items for Chris Sr. and Gary. Sorry, John Parker is with the defense, my bad, not the prosecution. The large safe that was in Chris Sr.'s bedroom was pried open with the jaws of life after a locksmith could not crack it. They did show pictures of the outside and the inside. There was $20,000 in cash inside, and then a list of guns that I'm going to list off in case anybody's curious. And at this point, I believe they were talking to the second agent. He's a BCI agent, Fortner, Fortner. And I'm pretty sure he was the one who was on the stand during this. The cross-examination of Hanshaw was pretty brief and a very brief redirection. And then he was off the stand right after lunch. So Parker counted there were 16 or so long rifles or shotguns found in the gun safe. They did not know the amount immediately, but Fortner said it would have been in a full inventory. And I was on a run a long time ago. It was a house fire that had a huge gun safe that we actually had to cut into through the kitchen floor with the jaws of life. And we had to pull out guns and help with the inventory of that as well with ATF. Of course, no one was murdered in that scene, but that's not the point. There were also 2 handguns and a Tech 9 or Uzi or Mac 911 type gun. I don't know what those are. I heard of Uzi a long time ago in a mob video game. I don't know what that is. A couple more things to finish up Hanshaw. I got on a bit of a side note there, and then we'll move on to Fortner. When they did the cross-examination of Shane Hanshaw, John Parker for the defense did it. They did discuss, the marijuana plants, the broken door handle, the blood on the door. And Hanshaw also went into, when they were talking about this outbuilding, there was a security camera that was missing. And when he went into the building, he showed a long cable that he took. And I guess he swabbed the ends of all these looking for DNA. There wasn't anything that could be concluded to be anything. But they were all bleeding. Excuse me. Okay, apparently I'm tired after sleeping all day. All these cables were leading to a security camera that was not there. So clearly there was a device that was taken, potentially even the SD cards, HD card, I don't know if that's a thing. Whatever it would use as the backup for the recordings. Hanshaw did admit that he had no way of knowing how many people had been in Chris Sr.'s house before he got there. Not that that's super relevant, with the exception of the footprints, of course. The cross-examination was less than 40 minutes. It wasn't really anything. For the most part, during it, they were establishing facts, and the defense was in agreement on these. And they did make, again, a point of pointing out that there was 0 DNA in this house belonging to the Wagners, which I feel like is going to be a big deal. But on that note, they also pointed out that had they worn gloves, there would not be any DNA. All right, I kind of jumped around a little bit, but next up we have BCI Special Agent Todd Fortner. He is another crime scene investigator, and he's the guy that does the 3D scanning, and I do not have the pictures of this. They are super cool. He was assigned to scene number 2, which was 4199 Union Hill Road, which is Frankie and Hannah Hazel Gilly, their residence just up the hill from Chris Sr. Now, I have a lot of questions about this regarding when Chris Sr. and Gary were killed. I realize they had silencers on these guns, but you would have, with all the things going on, all these illegal things with the chickens, and Frankie's house is where the chickens were, with the chickens and the drugs and the derby cars and all this sort of thing, you would think that you would be very aware when there is a truck belonging to a family that you are in these dealings with in the driveway that's connected to yours. And they're saying that the timeline puts us around 11 o'clock approximately. I mean, I guess they could be asleep, but I feel like this would have to either be done simultaneously or one right after the other, but I'm sure they'll get into that. So Fortner uses what is called a Faro scanner, F-A-R-O, using lasers with a rotating mirror to scan an entire area, collect 44 million measurements within about 7 minutes, and it overlays photos on the measurement points to give you these 3D images. Go to the next part. I'm also going to point out what Hanshaw said, because I am jumping between articles, so this is going to kind of jump around a tiny little bit today. Hanshaw, before he left the stand, did answer as to why Chris Sr. and Gary's bodies laid in their houses for probably over 24 hours before being removed. He said that there was so much evidence between the front entrance and where the victims were found that moving them would present too much of a chance that they would disturb the evidence, miss something, and he didn't want to lose the evidence that might help determine who had done this to them. One more incidental thing that I forgot earlier that he found was a notebook. Friday, I had talked about a bullet being lodged in a speaker on top that sat behind where Chris Sr. was sitting in a recliner. On top of that speaker was a notebook that I'm assuming were clients of Chris Sr.'s. And the last entry, it just said Billy 4/21/22 or 16. So that would have been the day prior, and Billy, of course, being Billy Wagner. And I also learned today that this is the first case that the state has used the Faro scanners on for the 3D scans. Again, if you go to Evan Millward on Twitter, he did post some pictures that look like pictures that were taken. They're not. They're the 3D scans. These things are so cool. And they show the bullet trajectories. Hold on, I'll show my computer screen. It's not going to be very good, but you might be able to see it. So here we have Evan Millward's Twitter. This is a picture that he posted of outside Chris Sr.'s house. You can see a trajectory here. And then this one is the outside. These are marking entry places. And then there's one more that shows several trajectories coming from down around a bush hog that was down here. Potentially up here beside, over here's that marijuana building beside an old tow truck and a picnic table, going up and going into the door of Chris Sr.'s trailer. Another reason that Mr. Fortner was brought in, not just for the 3D scans, was that he ultimately helped recover a bullet that had been fired directly into the floor of the home. This was a hollow point pistol projectile that had not exploded, which shows that it had not hit anything. And ultimately, he helped find it with the trajectories and that sort of thing. And another agent crawled underneath the house to retrieve it. He was also on scene when they went through the large safe. And he was questioned about watching all of that be removed and the contents of the safe. Go to the last part. We'll sum it up for today. So finally today, this Todd Fortner, they were questioning him about the guns. I read off what there were. There was one semi-automatic pistol and a carbine pistol. Fortner testified that he was not familiar with the carbine pulled from the safe, but said guns of that type could be modified to be fully automatic and could handle large clips. He did not know whether it was semi-automatic or fully automatic. So that's all as far as testimony today. I assume they're going to start back with Todd Fortner tomorrow, and they're going to get more in detail about Frankie and Hannah Hazel's scene, which honestly I'm pretty excited about. Not excited, that's a really shitty word. I'm interested about, because I apparently missed when they went over the details of that scene in the opening. Couple tidbits I found out today. I don't know when they said this. I've missed it, but I've gone back and read. Several people said that it was said when they did that after the Wagners allegedly, all of this is alleged, again, go see the disclaimer. Anyway, after the Wagners allegedly killed Chris Sr., and I assume just walked over to Frankie and Hannah's, they took Chris Roden Sr.'s truck to commit the other ones. And I'm pretty sure that the prosecutor, Angela Canepa, said that she said they decided it would be less suspicious if anyone had seen them if they were in Chris's truck versus Billy Wagner, or I assume that they were in Billy's truck. And then after they were done riding around on their murder spree, they took the truck back to Chris Roden's residence. Apparently, not only was it said in an opening statement, she also said it's on surveillance, and I hope to God somebody tested this truck for DNA. Or at the very least, they would find some of the blood from the crime scenes inside the truck, seeing as they would have left shoe prints on the first scene, according to their alleged version of events. But yeah, that kind of blew my mind today. There's also somebody else that brought up today. This was in a thread on a Facebook group of things you've learned so far from this trial that you didn't know before. that Billy Wagner's niece had the GMC Sierra. I don't know who owned the GMC Sierra, but it came up in Discovery, and he had gifted it to her on the morning of the 22nd, and other people were calling it the murder truck. So, yet again, something I've missed the memo on. According to opening statement, they said that Jake and George were hiding in a false truck bed of Billy's truck. I assume it was Billy's truck when they first went over to Chris Sr.'s house. I still am not 100% convinced of that. I feel like it would be really hard to hide them. They're both pretty big guys. Go to the last part. I got a few more things I want to say for today. I love it. You can tell how long this has gone on by how dry my hair is getting. I have a few pictures that I want to share that I've been showing people, like when I see them personally. Just pictures that I find interesting. So I'm going to put some of those in here and kind of explain them a little. This is the map laid out by Henshaw of Chris Sr.'s residence. You can see the red marked as the drag patterns, the recliner, some markings back to the bedroom where they were found, which is on the left-hand side of the picture. Kind of helps orient you a little better to what we're looking at and what the inside layout of the trailer was. Here is the aerial view of the Chris Sr. Frankie Roden compound. You are looking at, again, Chris Sr.'s property right here. Here's the trailer. Here is the outbuilding. And these are the buildings that they were talking about that had the broken handles and the missing cameras that contain the grow operation. Right up here at the top here, this is Frankie Roden and Hannah Hazel's house. You can see it was kind of all connected, and there are some papers right here that led up to their home. Here we have a wonderful flow chart that if you are confused, this is the best thing to start with. Up here at the top, we have Dana Manley Roden, Christopher Roden Sr. They're 4 children. 3 children, my bad. Oh my God, 3 children. Their brother and cousin, and how the Wagners are also tied in with Jake Wagner, Sophia, and George, Billy, and Angela. Here's some further pictures of that outbuilding outside of Chris Sr.'s house. I also laughed pretty hard at this comment down here at the very bottom about the judge warning them not to post about it on MySpace. So I don't think technology is his strong suit. And to be fair, the man is retiring next year, so he's probably not the youngest person. Here is the layout of Dana Roden's property, showing where the bedrooms and bodies were found. Can pause to look closer. This is the Wagners. I believe that they are in Alaska at this point, so this is when they were running. We have Angela, George, Billy, Jake, my finger went away, little Sophia in his lap, and this here, the man, the myth, the legend, old Bullward or Bullwine or Bullvine or whatever this child's name is. This picture just makes me really sad. And you know what? If George Wagner had nothing to do with it, by this point, he friggin' knew about it and he was going along with it. So you know what? You are just as complicit as the rest, bud. Last picture, and possibly the most haunting of all, this is George and Tabitha's wedding with the Rodens in attendance. All right, now I wanted to be done, but honestly, this picture deserves all the explanation in the world. So you've heard me talk about Bullvine. His parents, this is George Wagner the fourth, the man on trial this week. This is his ex-wife, Tabitha. Right here behind my head, Frankie Roden, Chris Jr., Chris Sr., Hannah Mae Roden, Angela Wagner, Billy Wagner, and Jake Wagner. This picture was taken at the wedding of George IV and Tabitha. And I believe I read that Dana Roden was the one taking this picture. I do not know the date on this. But oh my God, this just makes me so sad. I mean, these people were just... and just look at this bitch. Does she not look like the most controlling? My sons are the most precious and do nothing wrong and would never treat a woman badly bitch you've ever seen? Bro, fuck her. And I found this picture over the weekend. Tell me this is not just... First of all, what the fuck is this? This is Jake Wagner and Hannah Mae Roden And that's baby Sophia. Like, this is so, what the fuck is this? What redneck bullshit is this? But how sad is this? He fucking shot her in the head while she was laying in bed next to a new baby. What the fuck? And the last picture I'm going to show for today, this is from March 30th, 2016. So just 3 weeks before Hannah Roden gave birth and 3 weeks and 2 days before she was murdered. This is at, I can tell just by looking at it, this is Gaddy's Pizza in Portsmouth, Ohio, which is in Scioto County. Hannah Mae, Corey, her boyfriend, my low battery warning came on, so I don't know where it cut me off. Hannah Mae, Roden, Corey, her boyfriend, and then this is baby Sophia that unfortunately looks a lot like her dad. And they're just so happy. And she looks just so tired and miserably pregnant, like every other young mom that is about to pop with a second baby and has a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old. She wasn't even 3 yet. Could you imagine the amount of tired that this woman is feeling? Because there is no tired like pregnant tired, except when you have another kid. So this picture in general, it just makes me so sad. And I feel so bad for Corey. And had he been there that night like he was supposed to, he would also be included in this victim list. That's all for today. We will be back tomorrow with day 7 of the trial and see what happens tomorrow. Bye.